Okay, so recently I got myself a new acoustic guitar. This is my first new acoustic in, I'm not even going to say how many years. The two that you see on the wall behind me are quite old. And, when I first I started out playing a lot of acoustic fingerstyle guitar, and it's something I want to get kind of back into. So figured I'd get a new guitar. So this is a Taylor 214 CE Plus. Um, that's a different video as to what the hell that means. But it's got a built-in pickup in it. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to keep the EQ flat. It's got a low and a high EQ setting. Keep that flat. I got the volume all the way up. We got it plugged into the Quad Cortex, and I'm going to try to get a good kind of acoustic guitar sound. Really not looking for anything fancy. I'm not adding a lot of delays or modulations or anything like that. I just want a good, solid kind of acoustic tone. And I will say this too. For me, I'm looking more for a tone that'll work well for kind of, fingerstyle solo guitar. We'll talk a little bit about, maybe if there's different EQ settings you might want to do different if you're like strumming or if you want it in the mix or something like that. But, so I'm focused more on kind of solo fingerstyle kind of tones. And that might make a difference in how you EQ it and things like that. The other thing I'll say is, my approach to the preset was to think of the preset as if it was kind of a recording studio, meaning, in a live situation, you might run an acoustic guitar into a specific amp for acoustic guitar. I'm not looking for any capture of an acoustic amp. What I want to do is I'm treating the pickup output as if I was miking the guitar. And then I'm thinking of the Quad Cortex preset as how would I process that mic signal if I was recording. So we're going to talk about EQ, we're going to talk about compression, we're going to add a little bit of reverb maybe, and we're going to try to kind of bring a good guitar sound out of the acoustic. So the first thing I did was actually to go into Cortex Cloud and look up kind of presets that were meant for acoustic guitar and see if I could find some stuff that I like. So I figured let's review a few of those today and we'll talk about them. And then I'll go through the preset I created. And again, we'll talk about kind of how I structured it. So we go over here. We'll go ahead and go up here. So the first one I picked up was this one called Acoustic Basic. And I'm going to wear headphones for this because I find when I'm using the Quad Cortex with the acoustic guitar, the monitors, it's hard for me to hear how the monitors sound because it's kind of getting polluted, so to speak, by what I'm hearing out of the guitar itself. So with headphones, I can hear very specifically what the Quad Cortex is doing. So this one is called Acoustic Basic. We can see we've got a noise reduction gate. We've got a gain. So this is kind of important. If you're not using an amp, you need some ability to kind of gain up the signal from the guitar. So we're using utility gain here. This is something I used as well. There is an octaver here. We're not going to play with that. You've got an EQ, you've got compression, and there's some other effects here in the back end. But let's hear what it sounds like. So a good job of kind of giving a nice basic dry acoustic tone. If we look at it, we've got some compression going on here. So a good amount of compression, a good amount of makeup. And on the EQ, we're pulling back some of these kind of 500 hertz, kind of the lower mids. And this is something pretty common with acoustic guitars is you bring back some of those low mids. It's kind of good for strumming and kind of making the guitar sit well in the mix. And then this one, you can hear it's a little noisy. This one is using what I was talking about before. It's using a capture of an acoustic guitar amp. And then you've got some reverb on the end. So it's a little too, the reverb's a little too much, and I think the amp, I don't know, gives it a hollow sound that's kind of not my favorite. This is the Corey Wong one, and this one I think is kind of more along the lines of how I think of it, just kind of simple, straightforward. So a nice, you can see he's pulling back some frequencies on the EQ. So he's pulling back 57. He's pulling back that 500, just like the other one, and a few other frequencies as well. And on the back end, he's got a very slight amount of reverb. And then this is another one I found. So this one's using a bass overdrive. We've got some compression. We've got an acoustic amp, a gate. He's actually using a cab. So kind of not how I would approach it. So what I ended up doing was a couple of things. First, I kind of took that same approach that Corey Wong was taking. I did reverse where the EQ was and where the compressor was. So up front, we have a utility gain, really just cranking the gain. So this is taking the place of the amp. It's pushing the signal level. And you could do this on the input if you wanted to. I just like sometimes if I have space in the preset to use the block, I'd like it to be kind of out in the open because sometimes you don't know what's going on there. And then I'm using the octo comp. I'm not doing a lot of compression. You can see the threshold's only at -4 and the makeup's only at 1 and the mix is at half. So I don't have a lot of compression on it. I didn't want too much compression because, when I'm doing fingerstyle stuff, I want to make sure that, the dynamics of it can come across. Sometimes when you're strumming, the compression can be good, but if you're doing the that kind of fingerstyle, you want to be able to kind of raise the volume and bring the volume down and kind of be dynamic with it. And I didn't want too much compression. So if I wanted more compression, the first thing I would probably do is just raise the mix of this. But I'm going to leave it at 50%. And then EQ-wise, I've got a pretty basic EQ. I've got a parametric 8. And what I'm doing is I'm running kind of the key frequencies. So I've got a high-pass filter down here in the 70s. I've got a frequency here around 300. I'm boosting some of that low. I'm bringing back some of that mid, and then boosting a little bit of the upper frequencies, and then bringing some of the high ones down a little bit. And then what I did is I have an ambience reverb here, and I'm using this. Sometimes to me, the acoustic pickup, you lose a little of the kind of built-in resonance of the guitar in terms of there's a certain amount of reverb because it's a hollow body and it's an acoustic guitar. And I think adding a little bit of ambience here kind of adds some of that back into the signal. You can barely hear it, but it's just adding a little bit of additional tonality to it. And then, so I think that's a good start, and it's kind of a basic version of what I wanted to do. But then I play around a little bit, and I found something that I liked in terms of the doubler. And so what I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of doubler, and then I'm adding reverb. So I'm kind of doing keeping a dry signal down the middle and then adding some effects in a stereo. Again, this is intended for kind of solo guitar, fingerstyle kind of stuff. And then the back end, I've got some hall reverb here. You can see I got the mix pretty high because, again, I'm doing kind of a dry path and a wet path. And on the output, I'm even pulling back the second path to keep that volume down. So again, if we do the dry, and then if I go to with the wet, it just kind of makes it sound bigger, but you still get that kind of dry signal coming down the middle. So I did test this a little bit by using the same EQ that the Corey one is using. If we just compare the dry. So I think mine has a little more treble to it. I think that both could work. I think it just kind of depends on maybe the sound of the guitar and kind of the tone that you want to go for. So kind of that was my approach to this preset. I'm pretty happy with it. So like all my presets, I'll make this available on the Cortex Cloud. Feel free to download it. Let me know what you think. And as always, thanks for watching.